Um, the first order of business is chairs and secretaries' remarks. I will be brief and just say this is an extraordinarily busy time. Lots of moving parts and challenges and budgetary constraints at the federal and state government levels. And I just want to commend the MHEC staff team and many of our partners on the call. I've seen partners from University System of Maryland, from MICUA, from the community colleges. It's, now more than ever, we really need to work together on behalf of the best interest of Maryland students. And I feel grateful to work with such a committed team, both at the agency level and my fellow commissioners. So thank you for all you're doing and for taking time away from your regular duties to participate in this monthly meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to our secretary, Dr. Rai.
Thank you, Chair Moss. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 2025 meeting of Maryland Higher Education Commission. I also want to echo Chair Mott's sentiments here. We all have been working very hard. These are extraordinary times, a lot of challenges. We are very, very thankful to all our segments, MICUA, USM System, Public University, our HBCUs, our wonderful community colleges. We are working together, and while this is certainly a disruption, we do see opportunities here. Let me first start with a reminder again that we have settled into our new location at 217 East Redwood Street in Baltimore, and our office hours of operations are Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And all our office telephone numbers remain the same as listed on our website, mhec.maryland.gov. As I indicated earlier, over the past month and a half, the MHEC team has spent a significant amount of time in Annapolis, testifying before House and Senate committees on key topics, including budget hearings, higher education budget, FY 2026, aid to community colleges, FY 2026, Maryland Higher Education Commission, FY 2026, Student Financial Assistance, FY 2026. Bill hearing, House Bill 762, Maryland Higher Education Commission, Higher Education Goal Revisions, a departmental bill. House Bill 473 expands college access and affordability for the Promise Scholarship Program for part-time students and also students who are taking non-credit classes leading to certificates and licenses. House Bill 1090 supports students with food insecurity. House Bill 611 ensures students are informed through the college or university scorecard prior to enrolling at a college or university. House Bill 688 requires high school seniors to complete the FAFSA, but also provides a waiver for students who do not wish to complete the FAFSA. We remain deeply committed to advocating for our students and our institutions of higher learning. Despite budget constraints, we are grateful that the Moore-Miller administration's proposed FY 2026 budget continues to make significant investments in higher education, enabling us to meet the state talent needs while supporting a strong and thriving economy. Today, we will be presenting Performance Accountability Report for 2024. The Performance Accountability Matrix indicates that institutions are gradually recovering from the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on enrollment and student success. I immensely thank all institutions of higher education for doing this hard work. As we transition to the development of the next state plan, this work will be instrumental in shaping a cohesive vision for Maryland higher education system. The plan must establish a forward-looking policy framework that empowers institutions to serve all Marylanders effectively and equitably. At this pivotal moment, influenced by both local and national forces, we have an opportunity to create a more inclusive and responsive system that meets the evolving needs of students, communities, and our businesses and industries. Last Friday, I had the privilege of joining Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller's office and Maryland's Department of Information Technology for a state and academia artificial intelligence AI roundtable. This event brought together key stakeholders to discuss challenges, accomplishments, and shared priorities as we work toward making Maryland a national leader in AI research, innovation, business attraction, and talent development. During the event, I hosted a fireside chat with Dr. Anupam Joshi from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where we explored Maryland's key industries, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and the life sciences, and how higher education plays a central role in AI advancement. A couple of weeks ago, there was an AI summit in France where CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, made a certain observations, and I'm going to rephrase what he said there. Protein decoding is an important process for developing new treatments, vaccines, and etc. It used to take one graduate student's entire PhD to decode one protein. One protein, a graduate student is spending 4 to 5 years. Google has developed an AI tool, AlphaFold. AlphaFold took 3 months to decode 200 million proteins. And Google created a database that's used by folks around the world for developing new drugs, new treatments, and also new vaccines. So think about this basic research to translational research and impacting patients and communities. The value and the time that used to take is shorter today. 3 months ago, when Nobel Prizes were announced for chemistry, it went to 2 AI scientists from AlphaFold. Even the Nobel Prize for Physics went to folks who are doing AI work through neural network. So it's clear that AI has arrived and is making its presence felt. Given Maryland's strong assets in life sciences, AI, quantum computing, I think we have a really great opportunity to give a state a strong competitiveness in this new environment. We also thought about how to rethink AI integration across academic curriculums to better prepare the students for the future. And also pathways to strengthen cybersecurity education for students transferring from community colleges to 4-year institutions within the context of AI. The roundtable fosters engaging discussions and innovative ideas, reinforcing the critical work ahead to ensure Maryland is at the forefront of AI-driven advancements. MHEC remains committed to ensuring that our students receive high-quality, affordable, and cutting-edge educational experiences that prepare them for the evolving workforce. As always, we extend our gratitude to our educational partners, the Moore-Miller administration, and the General Assembly for their continued support in advancing higher education community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Secretary Rai. Next on our agenda are public comments. Ms. Ingwer, did anybody sign up for public comments?
No, there are no public comments today.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have meeting minute approval. We actually have 3 sets of minutes to approve, so I'll just take them one by one. I hope my fellow commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes that were sent in advance. The first set of minutes is from November 20th of 2024. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes? I think I saw Commissioner Howe raising her hand. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition or abstentions? All right, November 20th minutes are approved. Moving on to December 11th, 2024. Is there a motion?
I think that's
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Please note that I abstained from the vote on the November minutes since I was absent.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes, so noted. Sorry, I was moving a little quickly there. Anybody else have anything for the November 20th minutes? Okay. Moving on to December 11th, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve those minutes.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
second from Commissioner Thompson? All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention?
Chair Motz, I abstain as I was absent.
Okay.
And I was absent as well.
Thank you both. So 2 abstentions noted for the record. Thank you both. And then lastly, moving to the January 22nd minutes, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye or raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any oppositions or abstentions?
Chair Motz, I would like to abstain. I wasn't there.
Understood, Commissioner Serrano. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for your conscientiousness. All right. The next item on our agenda is an update on the Maryland State Plan for Higher Education. Just want to, before turning it over to my colleague, Vice Chair Agu, who has really led the work on behalf of our commission, I just wanted to sort of set the stage for our next couple of agenda items. As a commission, we have an opportunity and really a responsibility to think bigger about the future of post-secondary education here in Maryland. We know that the challenges facing our institutions, our students, and our workforce require us to move beyond business as usual in this 21st century. And in a minute, Vice Chair Agu will talk to us about the development of the next state plan for higher education, a process that will help set the course for how we advance access, equity, and economic mobility in Maryland in the years ahead. And then after that, we'll hear about an important piece about our accountability work, which is the 2024 Performance Accountability Report, or PAR, as the staff team refers to it, which is just chock full of really interesting, important data that I think can help set the course for our work. And I'm really, I don't know if folks had a chance to read all 700 pages as I did, but even if you read the first 21, it's just incredibly important and helpful data. So just in advance, want to thank the team who worked on that. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first, I'd like to turn it over to Vice Chair Agu to talk about the state plan, because that is really going to be our map. So Commissioner Agu, thank you.
No, thank you, Chair Motz, and I really want to give a big thanks to the MHEC team, so our Deputy Secretary, Assistant Secretary Dow, their teams, HCM Strategies, who really are I've been fortunate to be kind of alongside, but really those are the driving forces every day. So I want to make sure that they get on the unbelievable due that they deserve. One of the things that I think we are looking for, and that I've said as part of this process, and I think my fellow commissioners agree, is the reason that this plan is important is in some ways it's the framework and the box in which our institutions operate. So we want to make sure that we construct that box correctly and that it gives people the guardrails and the direction to go in the direction that we think is best for the state, for our students, and everyone, and kind of everyone in between. Where we are right now, just to give you a sense, where we're trying to work backward from, is ideally we want a plan that we can put before various stakeholders for approval toward the end of this year, going into the session into 26. Right now, what we've done so far is we have set kind of the top line goals that we are looking to create around student completion, around equity, around degree completion, around economic development, as well as other goals. So basically, we know that the buckets in which we are going to create targets. We are in the process of creating those. Then from there, with help from our consultants, HCM Strategies, backing in basically draft routes to get there. One of the goals that we are looking to create is basically making sure that the plan is not a thing off to the side, but it is a container in which we are putting in all of the great efforts that are happening here. So for example, the transfer work, which we know is a key lever to make sure that people are completing the way that they want to and getting into high value careers. We want to make sure that is not off to the side. It is part of this plan, key and clear. We have many questions in this group around data. We want to make sure that efforts to create the right data that we need to track our way there is also part of this plan. We want to make sure that, again, this is a central unifying effort. So we are right now in concert with our colleagues at, of course, here at MHEC, but also in conversation with the Department of Labor, who's creating a state workforce plan, in concert also with our colleagues at the Department of Commerce, who's creating a state economic development plan, we are going to be creating this plan over the next year. And so there'll be a couple of kind of parallel tracks. First track is actually creating this draft plan over the next probably 2 quarters. Additionally, we want to make sure, and I'll borrow the governor's words, we always want to make sure that we're moving in partnership, not just with our state partners, but also with a number of stakeholders across the state. So, and I think we have our deputy secretary here, and she has been an unbelievable partner here, but we are going to be doing a bit of a roadshow over the next 2 quarters with a number of stakeholders across the state. We plan, and I'll name a couple of those stakeholders, and you will see calendar invites and things for some of those meetings. But basically, we'll start with our institutions. So we plan to have sit downs with each of our segments to get feedback. Also hear proactive feedback as well as reactions to some things that we are producing. We've already had great interest from University of Maryland. I see Dr. Ringe somewhere on here. Our community colleges. We also want to talk to our career and technical schools. We also want to speak to our RHECs. We also want to speak to MICUA. We want to make sure that we hear that feedback, obviously, because that's critical. We also intend to have deep conversation with industry in various parts of the state, as well as in different sectors and industries, to also hear that, because we know that this plan is a big part of economic development. We also plan outreach, and these are still being calendared, with colleagues in state government, with colleagues on the local level, also with folks who are in our community-based organization community, whether that be nonprofits, philanthropy, others. One of the things that will be a characteristic of this plan is, obviously, this is about Maryland higher education, but this impacts everyone. And so our goal is to make sure that we are enlisting all the right stakeholders to execute the things that are going to be in this plan. And so you'll see a lot of this activity over the next 2 quarters. And our goal as we get toward the fall, really at the beginning of Q4, is to have a draft plan that we can coalesce around and truly begin to socialize, particularly as we get into next year. So that is where we are. But again, we're starting from the top level. We want to create the box in which our institutions operate and can move freely and appropriately with line of sight. We want to make sure that we're getting the feedback along the way. And I won't say the curveball, but the thing that we also now have to consider is a very different federal environment, which again, when we were first starting this process, was not part of our process. I cannot tell you how that will look exactly in the plan. We're still at the beginning, but that is another, frankly, reality that we have to keep in mind. And so expect to see some parts of the plan that try to address those things. We can't address everything, candidly. But those things that we can, we want to make sure that we do. That's one. Let me just say one other thing that will probably show up in how we as a commission do business. One of the things we're going to have to think about as we make this plan, things like the PAR, we have to think about how does that need to be augmented to potentially better reflect the plan and allow it to be a tool by which we can track progress all along the targets that we set. Not an answer that we have right now, but as a commission, that's the thing that we want to think about as commissioners. What do we need to see to make sure that we're moving in the right direction? The other thing that we are going to do, and Commissioner Motz, we haven't spoken about this yet, but we are going to, beyond our regular business, begin to bring in some outside voices to these commission meetings who are national experts on various things that we're going to be talking about. We will have our first at our March meeting. We will have Matt Siegelman, who is the president of the Burning Glass Institute. For those of you who have ever used Lightcast data or Burning Glass data back in the day, probably the premier workforce data and LMI across the country, he's going to be speaking to us on a number of things, some of them being how some other higher education institutions are thinking about credentials of value, how they're trying to define that and get to the outcome measures that they need to track progress. He'll be talking to us about AI exposure of skills, meaning how do we make sure that we are preparing students for this world and this economy that is going to be changed by AI? How do we make sure that we're training people for the future, not just the past? And he'll have some specifics on Maryland, which will be really helpful for us to gain some insight into, and we'll have a chance to dialogue there. But our goal is to make those regular occurrences, because that will inform how this group, and I think the state as a whole, really can ingest and interrogate this plan to make sure it's where we want to go. So apologies to say a lot here, but wanted to give the commissioners a sense of where we're going, line of sight, particularly over the next two quarters, where a lot of work is going to be happening. And we want to make sure that commissioners are read in along the way. Let me stop there. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take those. But Commissioner Motz, let me throw it back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Agu, to you and your fellow commissioners and the agency staff team for leading this work. It's really important to have that framework, and it sounds like we're really thinking beyond the scope of this agency or higher ed, but looking at workforce, I think, is really important. Any questions? Dr. Rai?
Chair Marks, I know you know this already, but I wanted to say this publicly. How fortunate we are at MHEC to have Commissioner Agu with us. His expertise in this area is, national expert in this area, and we have his services for free. So thank you, Commissioner Agu. At this time in Maryland history, having this commission, all our commissioners and Chair Marks and Commissioner Agu, we are so thankful for your guidance, direction, and your so serious interest in this work. Thank you.
Yes, I completely agree. Thank you, Commissioner Agu.
That is very kind, and honestly, I would just say I'm very much coasting off the brilliance of the amazing team at MPAC, like truly. So they'll be now in a couple of months, see if you still feel the same way. But honestly, there's a lot of work to do between now and then. And the only thing I can say to fellow commissioners is this is very much a chance for us to set the course of Maryland higher ed over the next half decade, and I think we know it's going to be a critical half decade. And so I really look forward to your partnership. And Madam Chair, I throw it back to you.
Great, thank you, sir. Well, as we continue to think about the future of higher education in Maryland, I think it's important to ground ourselves in where we are today. And I think the Student Success Summit that we held in Montgomery County back in November was a great starting point for these conversations. And I think the report that's about to be presented is very helpful in showing us where we are today and how our state institutions are meeting their missions and serving their students. There's some really interesting data in here. And I think a key part of what we do as a volunteer commission is ensuring that our state policies and our state investments, particularly at this time of scarce fiscal resources, are leading to meaningful outcomes for Maryland students. So I will turn it over to Dr. Dow, Dr. Lin, and Dr. Schmertz to walk us through this year's Performance Accountability Report.
Thank you, Chair Motz, and good morning, commissioners. I'm going to just very quickly run through a background of the Performance Accountability Report before I hand this off to Dr. Lin for her presentation. I just want to situate everybody on what this report is, what it's supposed to do, and why we do what we're doing today. The Performance Accountability Report, it's a key mechanism for ensuring that Maryland's public colleges and universities are accountable for achieving institutional and statewide higher education goals. The report tracks progress on institutional priorities by assessing key metrics, setting benchmarks, and measuring outcomes. The Performance Accountability Report is required by statute, and the statute sets specific elements of the report. Each public institution prepares an annual report on their institutional metrics and benchmarks, reviewed by its governing board, and submits that report to us, to MHEC. We then compile those reports, present them along with comments and recommendations to you for your approval, and then ultimately to the Governor and General Assembly. The current accountability process was redesigned in 2000. Before 2000, the public four-year institutions had separate reporting requirements from budgeting requirements. The process in 2000 streamlined to create a single reporting document that meets both accountability and budgeting needs. So there is a bit of history of why the report looks the way it looks today. There are some distinctions between our community colleges and our public colleges and universities. Again, institutions measure progress against their own established benchmarks through an indicator-based system. Public four-year institutions use a unified reporting structure that aligns with the Department of Budget and Management's budgeting process through the Managing for Results process, so DBM's MFR process. The benchmarks and metrics reflect the individual's institution's mission, academic and research priorities, the student body that they currently serve and intend to serve, and other institution-specific considerations. Therefore, each public four-year institution has different metrics and benchmarks for the purposes of this report. Community colleges, on the other hand, have a similar mission across the state, and the community colleges are not required to participate in DBM's MFR process. Therefore, the community colleges have chosen to use the same metrics, but with distinct benchmarks based on their own institutional priorities and capabilities. Metrics for both of these formats are updated periodically to reflect the evolving higher education priorities and institutional priorities. The Performance Accountability Report follows a regular annual cycle. You can see on your screen what that general cycle looks like. And so here we're at the final box where the commission reviews and approves the report. And then we submit the report to the legislature per the law. Some things to expect in the 2024 report that you're going to hear from Dr. Lin. Certainly a summary of institutional performance reports, some comparisons around key metrics in reflection of benchmarks, and definitely an identification of trends, challenges, and areas for improvement across the state. There are some policy and institutional elements based on these performance outcomes. Before I turn it over to Dr. Lin, I do want to emphasize that the Performance Accountability Report is one of many performance evaluation tools. While the title of this report includes the words performance and accountability, it's important to recognize that it's not the sole tool to use and assess institutional performance. The PAR primarily reflects institutional priorities, highlighting the progress of a college in achieving their self-defined goals. Beyond PAR, we, MHEC, and other organizations use a variety of other tools and data sources to evaluate system-wide performance. That includes the dashboards that we have up on our website that provide critical information on general enrollment, graduation rates, and student outcomes. We have additional reports and studies that examine specific areas such as workforce alignment and student success initiatives at the statewide level. And then other accountability measures, including things like program review, accreditation reports, and budget performance evaluations. So I just want to contextualize this. This is one of many resources to understand what our campuses are doing, how they are performing against their own metrics. At the same time, we have several statewide metrics that you can break out by institution. So with that, let's get into the 2025 report. I am going to turn the time over to Dr. Yushin Lin, who leads the charge in reviewing the institutional report and providing a summary to you all for your review and approval. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Lin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dahl, for introducing and walking us through the important background for performance accountability framework and the performance accountability report. So as she just mentioned, so performance accountability report is one of the important tools for the performance accountability framework. So this presentation basically summarized like what you see from the 400 pages long report, institutional report, and their summaries about their performance in 2024. So today I'm going to summarize the metrics, measures, and their narratives. And also last year, the commission have several questions for institutions to respond. And I'm also going to summarize all of the response in this presentation. So, so let me move on to the next slide. And so I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any clarification questions you want to ask, and do not hesitate to unmute yourself or raise your hand. So I'm happy to clarify. And if you have other questions, I'm happy to solve all of them at the end of the presentation. So here, I just want to give you a brief overview about what I'm going to cover in today's presentation. So first, I'm going to introduce some key indicators that the state and the MHEC really cares about. How did the enrollment, retention, and completion outcomes evolve over time? And also next, I'm just going to show you the institutional assessment. Are the institutions on track to meet their established benchmarks? And finally, I'm going to summarize the response to MHEC's 5 prompts raised last year. So last year, we asked questions for institutions to respond that include institutions' strategies and initiatives to increase the completion improve the success of transfer, eliminate equity gaps, equip graduates with employable skills, and finally, how institutions secure federal grants on student success. So due to the time limitation, so I'm going to focus on number 2 and number 5 today, but for the full list of the questions and answers, you can find them in the report. Okay, so here I show you the summary of the key indicators. Today, I choose 3 indicators to present: enrollment, graduation, and transfer rate. And more indicators are available in the report. So I'm happy to answer questions if you have any questions regarding the other metrics. So first of all, I want to show the undergraduate full enrollment. So you can find this figure also on page 5, figure 1. So very clearly, you see in 2022, the total undergraduate enrollment of Maryland public colleges and universities increased by 5% as compared to fall 2022. This making the first increase since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this increase was majorly contributed by community colleges, who seeing an 8% increase in fall 2023, and public 4 years also contribute to this increase. So their increase from fall 2022 to fall 23 is 3.6%. And next, we move on to the 6-year graduation rate of public 4-year institutions. And also these metrics are available by race and ethnicity. So 6 years is 150% of normal program length. And this rate is for full-time and first-time full-time student only. You can find this chart on page 8 and figure 5. So one thing you can see from this chart is there is no obvious upward or downward trend within the past 5 cohorts. But you can see the gap between the Black and white student become wider around 2015 and 2016 cohort of students. That means the student enters college first time in 2015 and 2016. So basically, this is when the student received the largest COVID impact, and so you can see this equity gaps still persist, but not so much was observed in terms of the changing the equity gaps for the other race and ethnicity. And then for community colleges, we use 3-year graduation and transfer rate. That is to see if you graduate or transfer to a public 4-year or private 4-year. So you will be counted as a 3-year graduation and transfer rate. This is also for first-time and full-time student. And 3-year is 100%, 150% of normal program time. So instead, actually, we can see a very clear upward trend. So if you compare to 7 cohort ago, so for the cohort 2020, on average, their graduation and transfer rate increased by 7%. And also you can see for the cohort 2018 and 2019, who actually received the most impact from the COVID, the equity gaps grows a little bit. And then this year, you can see the equity gaps still persist, but Black students' outcomes was improved a lot. So I see a hand raised, so I'm going to pause here and ask people to ask the questions, and I'm happy to answer.
Sure. Dr. Lin, hi, this is Commissioner Agu. Thank you so much so far. I said a quick data question, which is, so I see for community colleges, it sounds like the most recent data we have is from 2020. For publics, it is 2017. Can you just talk to me about just the limitation on the recency of the data, just so we can understand?
Yeah, happy to. And so basically our most current data collection is fiscal year 2023. So for example, let me go back to the last slide. So this is more like a math. So so basically, if you want to track the 6-year graduation rate for some student, you have to make sure they have 6 years to track. So basically, cohort 2017 is the latest cohort that have 6 years of enrollment, so that we have enough time to track them. So that is why the most current cohort is 2017. For community colleges, because we track them for 3 years, so likely we want to find out who are the most recent cohort having 3 years to track. So if you do the math, like 2023 is the most current year, and then the most recent cohort will be 2020. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that I got that. This may be a question that I asked for later, but how having thoughts about how we get something that's a little more real time. Obviously, and this is a data challenge for LMI overall, so on and so forth, making sure that we can get to something closer. As I think about just going back to the plan, making sure that we have kind of those as close to real-time metrics as possible so that we can begin to make choices and pivot. This is not a question for you, but I would love potentially your thoughts and your ideas on how we can potentially do that and invest in that. Because I know it's a challenge not just that we have in Maryland, but it's a national challenge. It's a state challenge. So anyway, that you answered my question as usually perfectly, but that's just a thought that I have. And I think I saw a hand from Commissioner Thompson. Tell me if I have that.
Yes, I had the exact same question looking at the scale, one ending at 2020 and one ending at 2017. So thank you, Dr. Lin, for explaining that.
Okay, so I see no more hand raised, so I'm going to proceed to the next slide. And okay, so now I'm going to present the institutional assessment. First, I'm going to summarize the performance for the public four-year institutions. So as Dr. Dahl just explained, the public four years have different metrics because they use MFR, and also they have different cycles. So I want to emphasize that 7 public four-year institutions, MFR cycles actually concludes in 2024. And so I want to call your attention in a minor difference when I use the language to describe how institutions' performance compared to their benchmarks. So when the institution cycle is not to the end, but their pattern and trend shows the measures may now be able to grow to the benchmark levels by the end of the cycle, I will call these institutions as falling behind the progress. And when we see some institution cycle conclude in 24, and the measures that does not reach the targeted level, so those institutions will be categorized as not meeting the goal. So, and again, so if you're interested to know the detailed list of the public four-year cycle, when they conclude, when they get started, you can find that in the footnote 17 on page 10 in the report. Okay, next. So let's get started by success measures for the public 4 years. So just as I just summarized, so public 4 years say a really great increase in their undergraduate enrollment. Their undergraduate enrollment increased by 3.6% in the fall 2023. And so 11 institutions have a goals for enrollment diversity. So and out of 12 institutions met or on track to meet the goals for minority, economically disadvantaged students or enrollment of Pell Grant recipients. And also 6 institutions report the STEM enrollment and 4 established benchmarks for that. So all of these 4 institutions who established benchmarks toward STEM enrollment, 2 institutions either met or were on track to meet the goals for STEM enrollment. And then move on to the success measures. So for success measures, we pick retention rate and graduation rate to reflect their effort in success. And so 11 institutions have measures on retention rate. UMB and UMGC are the 2 institutions who do not report on retention rate, probably because they are special population. UMB is majorly a professional study institution, and UMGC is majorly an online institution. So out of 11 institutions who have measures on retention, 8 institutions met or on track to meet the goals for second-year retention rate. And 12 institutions have measures on graduation rate, 6-year graduation rate. And UMGC does not have a goal for graduation rate. So, but only 6 have a benchmarked for the graduation rate. Out of the 6 institutions, 4 institutions failed to reach the goals for 6-year graduation rate, and 2 were behind the progress. So move on to the innovation measures. So this year we picked two perspectives to show how institutions make effort on innovation. So first is licensure exam pass rate for teaching and nursing, because these two measures are the most commonly provided measures in public four-year institutions. So 9 institutions have reported on licensure exam pass rate. And so the licensure exam pass rate for teaching and nursing remained consistent this year for most institutions. And also 7 institutions have measures on number of teacher pipeline graduates, and 4 did not achieve goals for the number of teacher preparation program graduates. So that is to say we still face the important shortage and mind for the student who are willing to enter the teacher pipeline. So Commissioner Agu.
Apologies for always stopping your progress. This is a really fascinating slide, and a question I had was just the mechanics behind it. So let me just throw out a scenario. Obviously, we know cybersecurity is a huge industry of focus for the state. Do we have the ability, for example, to track for someone who has studied cybersecurity at an institution to see what their pass rate might be for something like, for example, a Security Plus certification? Do we have that ability, or do we have particular access to teaching and nursing data just by the nature of the exam? Because basically this will be a great analysis to be able to do in other industries where there are certifications that are kind of critical to being successful. So curious if we can replicate this for other places where those certifications are kind of prevalent.
Yeah, I can answer part of the questions, and then I will defer to Dr. Dao to give you more background. So basically, all of these metrics were constructed at least 5 years ago, and probably like for some reason, for example, if the institution offers this program, and they are willing to track this program, and they are willing to track the licensure pass rate for some major or some areas of the study, so that's their option. But what I can tell you, nursing and teaching is definitely not the only 2 majors that we track and the institution track in their MFRs. So the reason we pick teaching and nursing is because this is the most commonly shared areas that like most institutions offer this licensure pass rate in their MFR. But for example, like UMB have other pass rates on, like say the Maryland Bar test pass rate, and also they have some like pass rate on other areas like the I can't remember what on the top of my head, but definitely go more than that. And so then I'm going to defer this question to Dr. Da, and she can tell us more like how, if we're interested in cybersecurity and there's definitely some mechanism and they want to track this.
So thank you, Dr. Lin. Thank you, Commissioner Agu, for the question. MLDS is going to be a key partner in answering. So yes, we MHEC are interested in these data around licensure testing at pass rates for a national test that's recognized by industry. What's important here, the reason why we bring it up here is because it's a key metric for many of the institutions around specific academic programs, because they want to ensure that students can meet that licensure requirement. Back to the bigger question that you have, do we have access to those data? We MHEC do not, but MLDS it does have access to those data, and is currently, it was maybe 2020, 2019 legislation that expanded MLDS's oversight to get licensure data, so that they can say, okay, wow, a student has completed a program, what has happened to them regarding licensure? That has been admittedly a little bit of a slow burn, but they are working on that, and they do have some really important licensure data in their inventory. So it's a yes and no question.
Yeah, I
yes
think
and no answer, sorry.
the great answer, Dr. Dow and Dr. Lin. One more thing, Commissioner Agu, that I will add here is all nursing graduates take licensing exams. All teaching graduates take these exams. That's not the case yet in other areas like cybersecurity. But it's an important question. Security Plus exam is important. It adds value as soon as you pass to your cybersecurity degree. So we have the ability through MLDS to find out of 100 cybersecurity graduates, how many took Security Plus exam and how many of them passed. So we will look into that. Certainly that will be an augmentation to this report that could be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. This is helpful.
Yeah, I see another hand raised from Commissioner Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Lin. I'm looking at the word innovation, just in terms of your quick review, and I know this is a summary here. Were there really innovative new things, or is it a focus on what took place with more effort? Just trying to get the terminology correct.
Yeah, I think this is great question. So first of all, because innovation is unlike success and success, which have a very commonly defined metrics to measure.
Yes.
So for each institution, they may care about different perspectives. So for example, some institutions really care about the incubators that they created in the last year, or the donation they received from alumni. So basically those things are very hard. Maybe like 2 institutions report on that measures, and then like other 2 institutions report on a different measures. So so basically, yeah, there are a lot of other innovations measures available in the MFR, but thing is, we're trying to give you something that shared more in common by most of the institutions, so that we can summarize some patterns and trends for the institutions. But again, so like Dr. Dahl explained, so the performance accountability report itself is very important too, not because it includes a lot of common measures, but also because institutions have a detailed list of the areas that they care about, especially for public 4 years, because they're different and they serve different populations. They have different priorities in their missions and in their objectives. So basically, yeah, so what I can see is my report summarize some of the special perspectives for innovation, but more importantly is I want to respect each institution's priorities, so that if there is no common theme that I can find from most of the institutions, so those summaries were not presented in this presentation. But again, so those are available in their narratives and in their report, and most importantly in their metrics, MFR metrics. So feel free to read those. And so there are some measures available to reflect their effort on that area. I hope I answered the question.
I'm just looking for, what was really great, what was really innovative. Thank you so much.
Do we have another hand raised?
Yes. So I have a question. So it's a 2-part question. So in the innovation for public 4 years, I wanted to know, is there any institution that is outstandingly doing greater than another institution in that particular subject? For example, if you just look at the computer, cybersecurity engineering programs from institution like UMES versus Bowie, can you see okay, they're doing well, and why are they doing well? So we can get other institutions doing well, even though they have different programs. So that's my first part of my question. And I'm ready. I'm listening.
Okay. Do you prefer me answer first the question, and so you save your
Yes.
second question after?
Yes.
Okay.
Go
So
ahead.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can see some institutions. So they actually have already existed their benchmarks they set for the measures. The thing is, the framework for performance accountability report is not to compare one institution to another, because institutions are different. They have different baseline, they have different target, they have different populations. So it might be comparing oranges to apples if we compare UMB to another different institution who are in the rural area. So basically the key part or key framework in this performance accountability report is to compare institutions to themselves, to the goals they set for themselves several years ago. And then we see how they progress toward that goal and say if they can make themselves accountable for the goals they set for themselves. So yes, to answer your question, definitely some institutions did great because they set great benchmarks, reasonable benchmarks, and make a promising progress toward that goal. But thing is, like you could not draw a conclusion that because this institution moving grade to the goal, so we should call this institution is better than another institution. But of course, there are definitely important lessons we can share between institutions. Like this institution did great in one of the areas, so that the experience can be shared by among the sectors. So this is definitely doable, but I don't really have any statistics to say like this institution are doing specifically great or better than most of other institutions.
No, I say that specifically because of like, you know, the lessons. Because like I was looking at different cybersecurity engineering programs, and some of them do lead to different certificates. But if you go to another program's website in Maryland institution, their cybersecurity engineering program do not lead to CompTIA or any of the certificates, which is needed for like real life applications, which is going to affect the student long term when they need to like get a job. And like that's why a lot of people are getting certificates. So I think that like even if we can like see, okay, these are this like even if we're measuring them against each other, not each other, against themselves, you know, the metrics, it would be good to like look at the lessons like even after. So like, oh, this institution, yes, they're serving this demographic of people, but like I think Dr. Rai was talking about, he was like, not all of them lead to like, not all of them take the same test. But like if we learn the lessons, and if whether I go to this institution or another institution, I'm learning the same, like I'm compatible. I'm competitive. That's the word, competitive. So yeah, I just think that that's a thought. Because
No,
yeah. Because sometimes quality is really not the same. It's not. Even if you just look at the degree program formatting, it's not the same. Like getting a teaching degree at one institution, even though it's serving a particular demographic, is not the same as getting one at another institution. That's why some jobs are like, oh, they went to this institution and we want them because if I look at their major planning, they have all of these, they've taken these classes that are necessary, versus another institution, well, they know a little bit about it and they're not going to be as successful in this job, so we might not hire them. So I think that's just something to take account, like learning lessons, even if they're serving different demographics. That's my opinion, but I'm listening.
No, that's great. Do you still have the second question?
Oh, that was my second question about
Oh,
lessons.
great.
While learning lessons. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. So then I see other hand raised. If not, I'm going to continue my presentation. Of course, you're welcome to. This topic can be continued and discussion can be continued after the presentation. Okay, so let's move on to community colleges. So again, so all community colleges, 16 community colleges in Maryland have the same metrics and the same cycle. So all their PAR indicators will conclude in next reporting year, that's 2025, not in this report. And they are benchmarked to the goal of 2026. Just a little reminder before I present the findings. And then let's get started by introducing the access measures for community colleges. Again, just the recall, the credit enrollment increased significantly for community colleges by 8% for 2023, and also their non-credit enrollment also increased. But thing is, community colleges still face challenges in enrollment, not because of this 1 year rebound, it's because the increase is not significant enough to offset the 10+ year decline due to the COVID and some other contributors that caused the decline in community college enrollment. And so when the years are good, community colleges set a goal, which is very promising and very positive, but because of the COVID-19 and other factors, so even though we see a significant increase this year, but 12 are still behind the goals of the credit enrollment, and the 15 are behind the non-credit enrollment goals. And then this is majorly can be reflected by the other side of the measures, that is the market share. So we have two market shares to be presented. One is first-time, full-time market share, which means the percentage of the service areas residents who enrolled as first-time, full-time in community colleges. And another market share is recent high school graduate market share, which similarly means the percentage of the service area students who are high school graduate who enrolled in community colleges. So both benchmarks, both market shares fall behind the goals. So 14 colleges fall behind the goals of the market share for recent high schools, and 13 are behind the goals for market share for first-time, full-time. And there are some bright side. So one thing is high school student enrollment or due enrollment, early middle college students increased. So you can actually see more discussion about how community college strengthen the relationship between with high schools in the section called community outreach and impact in their narrative report. So move on to success measures for community colleges. So I see another hand raised.
Hi, Dr. Lynn. I just wanted to confirm something about the 8.2. This is Commissioner Warmack. I'm sorry. Dr. Lynn, to confirm the date. I'm sorry, my voice is going out on me, so I'm going to try to keep quiet. The 8.2% increase in enrollment is based on the credit for fall 2023, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was reading I had my dates right. Thank you.
You're correct. Okay. Move on to success. Okay. So for community college success measures, so we have retention rate and also we have graduation rate / transfer rate. So 14 community colleges are on track to meet the benchmarks of retention rate, but 8 community colleges face the challenges in meeting the retention goals for the developmental students, the students who are assessed below the college readiness. And 13 community colleges have already existed or made promising improvement to the benchmarks of full-year graduation transfer rate, but 11 fall behind the goals for developmental completers. So here I just want to make a little bit background introduction. That is, many colleges do not benchmark retention or graduation rate for race ethnicity subgroups because of a small population size. So for many of the community colleges, there are only like 40 something, like under 50 student of color or of specific race and ethnicity. So there is really no way for us to disclose and track the graduation and transfer rate for the specific race and ethnicity. So that is why, if you still recall, I have these key indicators in the beginning of my presentation. So we can summarize them at the state level and show you how the different race and ethnicity group progress over time. I see a hand raised from Commissioner Hall.
Yes, why don't the numbers add up for the same number of community colleges between your first bullet and your second? Because you have 14 and 8, then you have 13 and 11.
So, so basically they're targeting on a little bit different measures. So 14 is for overall retention for all of the students, and 8 is for the retention of the developmental student. So basically, majority, like 14 community colleges can meet the goals for the overall retention rate. The thing is, 8 community colleges have some challenges to meet the goals for developmental students. So basically, this is about institutions who can or cannot meet the goals. So basically, they do not add up each other because they are not talking about same metrics. And
right,
so the second bullet point, they're basically like overall metrics versus a subgroup metrics.
And Dr. Lynn, just to do the math in my own head and let me make sure I say this correctly. So I'm looking at your first bullet. 14 community colleges are on track for retention overall, which means there are 2 that are not.
Yes.
14 plus 2 is 16, and then but 8, and then we have 8 colleges who are facing challenges meeting their goals for developmental students, which means we have 8 that are not. We have 8 that are meeting the goal. So basically, so the folks who are on the other side, we're just not saying, but basically there's a 14, there's an invisible 2 that we're not talking about for that first clause, I think Commissioner Howe, and then for the second, the same thing. We have 8. They're also invisible that we didn't mention. That would add up to that 16, which is all the community colleges.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you so much for explanation. And also, yeah, for the time limitation, I couldn't really speak out the institution's name, but you can find, for example, that the silent 2 community colleges that are not mentioned here is listed in the footnote of the report. So feel free to check who meet the goals, who did not meet the goals. And yes, thank you so much for the math. So yeah, so 8 community colleges have challenges. That is to see another 8 did not face the challenges. So same logic, so same reasoning applied to the second bullet point is certain community college have already existed or meet the goals for the benchmarks of overall graduation and transfer rate. So basically we have 3 colleges did not meet the goals or fall behind the goals. And then 11 fall behind the goals for developmental completers, meaning the students who are assessed as developmental education needed, and they complete the developmental courses. So that is to say, another 5 did not. Another 5 actually meet the goals. So basically, again, so you can find the full list of these institutions' name in the footnote. And another thing I want to call out, like why the developmental students are facing challenges, is not necessarily because the developmental students are worse off than they used to be many years ago. It's because many of the community colleges now implement this multi-measure metrics for assessing students as a college ready or needing remedial education. So previously, they only rely on single standardized test score like ACT, SAT, or IQ Pleaser, which is also a college readiness assessment tool. But after the multi-measure assessment was introduced, so many institutions, many colleges start to evaluate students from multiple assessments, including high school GPA, prior college level math course taking and credit earning, and other standardized test score. So basically, you can see these measures can lead to a more accurate assessment and placement for the student. So you can see, like previously, we may mistakenly place a lot of students who were supposed to be placed under college ready, but they, because of the less accurate assessment tool, they were placed under needing remedial education. But now, because of the improvement in assessment tool, so now those students will not be misplaced in some like lower their level. They are placed very accurately above the college level, and so they can just take the college level courses directly. So you see the students who are still assessed as needing remedial education are students who are really struggled with college level courses. So basically you can see these students are the students who are really in the other side or like on the other tail of the distribution. If you see their assessment as the distribution of something, and so basically those students are the students who really need some help in the course taking. So that is why some institutions face the very important significant challenges in the retention rate and the graduation rate. So okay, so moving on to next slide. Okay, so innovation. So for innovation, and so first of all, importantly, community colleges still serve as the instrumental role in economic mobility because we can see a lot of improvement in employment after graduation. 10 community colleges experience an increase in employment rate within 1 year of graduation, and student income 3 years after graduation is 3 times higher than their income before enrollment. So this is great evidence that shows that community colleges are still very important in help students to realize their upward economic mobility. And also, institutions report their licensure exam pass rate, and 12 colleges licensure exam pass rate improved compared to last year, which is very positive. Okay, so finally, I want to summarize the response to MHAC prompts. As I mentioned, due to the time limitation, I won't go through all 5 questions. So you can find the whole response and the whole questions in from page 15 to page 20 in the report. So I'm going to focus on 2 questions today. One is success of transfer students, Another is about federal grant secure. This is both because these two questions are aligned with state interest and also provide important information for the recent pressing issue. So let's get started by success of transfer students. So recently, Aspen Institute kicked off the collaboration with MHAC on Maryland Transfer Promise. So this answers basically also provide important insight on institutional effort, increasing success for transfer students. So from perspective of public 4 years, so they are the receiving institutions. So they try to maximize the student credit transferred and improve the process efficiency. They also try to provide support staff, tailored orientation and advising program. And also they try to build the partnerships with feeder institutions. And from the perspective of community colleges, they are the sending institutions. So they spend the effort on building up the pathway programs and partnerships with four-year institutions. They provide advising and support for their transfer students to help them transfer to next institution. Most importantly, all community colleges have the metrics for transfer student success in their PAR metrics. And another important question is about federal grant for student success. I want to remind you this federal grant only reflects the grant for student success. The research grant is not included. So you can consider this as a part of the federal money received by Maryland institutions. So for public 4 years, all 13 institutions reported they have received federal grants by the year of 2024. In total, they report 340 awards. That total amount is $422 million. If you average it to each institution, so every institution on average received $1.4 million, and on average, each institution received 23 grants. And for community colleges, 15 out of 16 community colleges have received the federal grant. And in total, they report 146 award, and the total amount is $85 million. So on average, each institution received $0.58 million, and each institution received 9 grants. And for more detailed statistics, you can also find that in the report that also summarizes some of the max and minimum numbers. So feel free to check that. And that I'm going to conclude the presentation. So in summary, what we see from the report this year is first, undergraduate enrollment rebounds. Success outcomes like graduation and transfer are still recovering from the loss from pandemic. Equity gaps persist, but looking forward, there are still bright side. First of all, undergraduate enrollment keeps growing in fall 2024. So the preliminary result from opening fall enrollment show that undergraduate enrollment increased by 4% in fall 2024. And also Maryland has the third highest transfer rate in the US per national report. I think both of them actually still ensure that Maryland is trying the best to help students in their success, and innovation. So finally, I want to remind this is action item, so it will need your vote. So I want to read out loudly the recommendations to you, and then you can start the discussion. So recommendation is, it is recommended that the Maryland Higher Education Commission approve the 2024 Performance Accountability Report and ask the Secretary to forward it to the Governor and the General Assembly as required by law. So here I conclude my presentation, and please ask any questions you have. Okay, I see already one hand raised. So Commissioner Williams.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the detail and the conversation that every year that we do this. My question is, what's next? We talk about that. I remember having this conversation last year. What are the real world implications and import of this analysis with the data? And how does it match up to our, other parts of the budget and policymaking process, including the annual budget process? So here's a performance accountability report. There are key data in here that's very revealing, and there are longitudinal trends. And so what do we do with this? And is there a connection to the annual budgeting process that says, here's some strengths and here's some areas of opportunity to determine investments?
Dr. Lynn,
Yeah, this is a
let
great
me,
question.
yeah, let me step in here. I actually think Commissioner Williams, this is roughly the conversation we had last year. This is on us. I would argue this is actually on us as a commission to figure out what we want this to be. And I actually was going to say this. I think Chair Motz had to step away. So
I'm still here.
Okay, I don't know if you're here, but I would say this is up to us, and I would maybe put forward at least how I would approach this, which is we know we have our very long budget meeting in the fall, where obviously institutions come before us. I think it is incumbent upon us for institutions and for segments, to come up with very specific questions that we would like answers to. And we should give that to them way in advance and say, hey, by the way, when we see you all in September, we're looking to hear about some things specifically. So, for example, we know we have a few institutions that have had challenges on the developmental side. I want to hear what they're going to do about that, very, very precisely, kind of going forward. But I think for me, I'll say for me, and I would encourage this as a commission, I think there are specific things that we can ask questions about that come from this PAR. And I think, Commissioner Williams, your mind is where mine is, which is how do we make these two things connect? Meaning that the budget conversation is attached to to the PAR and what's in there. And generally, I'll say I think institutions try and tell us globally what they're doing around things, where they're trying to improve. I want to be very clear, institutions do that really well. I think we can give far more guidance based on this report to say, here are the specific things that we want to hear about, not necessarily to play gotcha or beat over the head, but what we generally want to hear is, okay, what's going to be different next year based on this budget on these areas where institutions specifically or segments as a whole need to improve. That's my 2 cents, which is how I would answer your question. But let me be quiet, and I'm curious your thoughts to see if that even gets to a beginning part for you.
Thank you
I
so
think
much.
Dr. Dukes has a question too.
Oh yeah, sorry. Oh, I did not see the raise hand. I apologize.
It's more of a comment and not a question. I appreciate certainly the remarks from Commissioner Williams, because I think that it does open up a larger conversation. I think that if this is on us, I believe that it's on all of us. And by that, what I mean is, what are the conversations that we're having with the Maryland State Department of Education? This is something that, it grows. It starts in elementary school, pre-K, elementary, moves to high school, moves to colleges and universities in our state. So quite frankly, from my perspective, are we on the same page with what it is that we want to see relative to success in education across the state of Maryland? And how does that beg the opportunity to engage in some dialogue with the board of the State Department of Education as to how we see our work interlocked? There's some interlocking here that I just don't think we're thinking about. We think about our sector, they think about their sector, but these students are moving through the system. And I think it's time for something that we haven't done in Maryland, at least to my knowledge, either at all or in a long time. How do we talk about the goals that we have from, again, pre-K through post-secondary education?
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes, I agree with Dr. Dukes and Dr. Williams as well. It's noted toward the end of the summary that institutions must reevaluate their performance metrics and related benchmarks in relationship to the state plan. And Commissioner Agu, you also noted that before you go out, you'll be looking to hear what institutions be doing. I think we need to really document those things. We need to make sure that we capture or have the institutions capture exactly what they're going to do to change it.
All excellent points. Any other commissioners want to weigh in? Commissioner Burnham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like some historical context. These accountability reports have been produced and submitted to the General Assembly for a number of years. How have the institutions actually taken areas where their data, their analysis shows that they need improvement? What have they actually done? What do we see historically? The detailed remedies don't seem to be included in the report here, but I know that institutions take what they learn from the exercise and make changes. Do you at MHEC actually know how they follow up, what they do after the report submitted to the General Assembly?
So I don't know if Barbara and Emily want to take this question because they probably know better about the historical context.
Sure, I'll take a stab. The short answer is we do not know. The communication loop with the performance accountability, after we shared with the General Assembly, our work begins again in that loop that was discussed that Emily showed, which is we begin again by giving them guidance on the next year's report. It's because it is self-determined. We assume that there are internal conversations with the public 4 years, the managing for results. Those same metrics that Yushin talked about, where there's institutions that are and are not on track, are entwined into what DBM is getting as well. And so theoretically, there are other eyes on these metrics to say, you've put a retention rate of X at the end of your 5-year span, and yet we see you're at Y. What is going on with that? And so I do think that there are built in some conversation mechanisms, but it is not a feedback loop directly back to MHEC, if that helps. And I don't know if Dr. Dow wants to chime in as well.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I do see our Deputy Secretary had her hand raised first. I don't know if you want me. Okay. I'll add another element to this report. And again, I think I just want to remind you all that this report is one of many tools that we can use to understand how students are progressing through our colleges and universities. This one is institution specific, and by statute, the governing board of every institution is supposed to be reviewing these reports, reviewing the metrics, and the governing board should also be playing a very critical role, holding the institution accountable to the benchmarks that they have set. So that there is that kind of invisible, we MHEC are invisible. We do not ask direct questions about how the governing board for every institution is holding the institution accountable using these tools as well. So we can certainly step in, but I want to give some recognition to the role and place as appropriate that the governing board has for every college and university in ensuring that the campus has the resources to provide the necessary support, that their benchmarks are realistic, that they're pivoting to serve different students and different populations. The governing board plays a critical role in that.
Thank you, Dr. Dow, for speaking to the shared governance nature of higher education and the fact that there are multiple entities and actors that are paying attention to institutional performance, and also making sure that our institutions have the conditions that they need, and that we as a state are creating those conditions for them to be positioned to support all of our learners. And I think part of what we are proposing as an agency as we develop the state plan is to develop in partnership, well, not in partnership, but a complementary accountability framework that addresses the questions that we're hearing here today from our commissioners. And so there are different tools that we keep talking about. And so I think what we would like to do as we develop the state plan is talk about how all of these tools work together to make sure that you as commissioners have the information that you need as you policy moving forward. So, and that includes budget making. And so I'm hearing that there is some request for making sure that you have certain tools available to you as you consider the FY27 budget proposal coming up in September. So we can certainly work towards that time frame. I'm also hearing that there is a desire to be more closely linked with our partners in other spaces, particularly K through 12. We have a great relationship with Superintendent Wright and our colleagues at MSDE. I know that they are currently working on redefining college and career readiness. We can certainly engage with them in that conversation since we are the college readiness side of that. And at the same time, we want to make sure that our institutions are supported and prepared to serve any student. So it's not just about college readiness, but it's also about student-ready colleges and universities. So there's, I think, some work that we can do there as we develop the state plan to make sure that we're tightly coupled, not just in the industry and commerce side, but also on the K through 12 side. So really, really appreciate the comments and looking forward to developing what we're calling a cohesive performance accountability framework, not just having individual tools that don't necessarily speak to one another.
I would like to add that excellent suggestions working with K through 12. I will say that while this report does not capture everything that's happening at our institutions of higher education, we believe that if you look at some of the data, you saw that 13 community colleges have exceeded their 4-year transfer and graduation rates. So certainly, a lot of work has happened at those institutions to get to those numbers. This report is one aspect, and it's kind of their actual efforts are missing there. College career and readiness, we are working closely with MSDE, and I think in some ways, most of what's coming out is being already adopted at community colleges and 4-year universities. But there is a space for further refinement. Core requisite model where the students are not placed in developmental and then coming to college level classes, where developmental and college classes are offered simultaneously. That model is also being scaled up. So in few years, we will see improvement in these numbers. But all these suggestions are very, very well taken. We need to get to our new state plan and then a cohesive approach to this, as the Deputy Secretary Kiroz Levan has mentioned. I think that would be a very, very good approach for us. Thank you for all these observations and guidance.
Thank you, Dr. Rai. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? All right, Dr. Lin, I believe you were looking for a vote. Is that right? All right, well, first, a huge thank you, Dr. Lin, to you and Dr. Dow and Dr. Schmertz for this excellent work. And I think you're hearing from our commission that we're very focused on this report, not just sitting on the proverbial shelf, but us actually taking action with the very interesting data in it, both positive and data that shows room for improvement. So we can assure you as a commission that your work is not for nothing and that we will be following up. With that, do I have a motion from my fellow commissioners with respect to adopting this report? I believe you had the actual language up on the screen. Could you put it back up there, please, Dr. Lin?
Sure. Coming back right now.
Thank you. So the motion would be that the commission approve the 2024 Performance Accountability Report and ask Secretary Rai to forward it to the Governor and General Assembly as required by law. Judge Howe, is that a motion?
I move that the Maryland Higher Education Commission approve the 2024 Performance Accountability Report and ask that the Secretary forward it to the Governor and to the General Assembly as required by law.
Excellent. Dr. Dukes, was that a question or are you in favor?
I'm going to second the motion.
Wonderful. Thank you, ma'am. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition or abstentions? All right. Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. I believe that is our last item before we go into closed session for an administrative matter. So I would like to make a motion that we go into closed session at the recommendation of. Oh, there's one more thing. Dr. Rai?
Yes, workforce analysis. Dr. Dow will be presenting that.
Oh, okay. My apologies. I may have to leave before we go into closed session, so Commissioner Agu is gonna, and AAG Ward will take it from there. But I'm sorry, Dr. Dow, I forgot about that part of the agenda. Go ahead.
No worries, and I can try to keep my remarks quick. This is just really a very brief update of where we are in the workforce needs analysis. As a reminder, during the 2024 legislative session, House Bill 1244 passed that requires the Maryland State Plan to include current and emerging state and regional workforce needs as annual appendices. So this is what we are calling the workforce needs analysis. We released a draft of the analysis at the end of December. Since then, we have presented, discussed it with the Segmental Advisory Council, the Advisory Council on Workforce Needs, the Program Review Process Advisory Council, several other statewide standing meetings that we have with colleges and other community partners. And I also want to share that we shared a draft through formal written communication with the Legislative Policy Committee within the Maryland General Assembly. Finally, we launched a public-facing survey and made key documents available for the public through our MHEC website. We're super grateful for the significant level of engagement from partners across the state. Their input has been instrumental in refining our approach. Three major themes from the feedback that we received. First is, of course, data sources and methodology. There are, Commissioner Ago, you had just mentioned Lighthouse data, definitely a recognition that there are other data sources out there that can help inform workforce demand. So inclusion of those data sources in future iterations would be helpful. Just explaining our methodology a little bit better. People seem to not be clear around the methodology. And then finally, data gaps, particularly around non-credit programs and emerging occupations. So that's the first kind of lump of feedback around data sources and methodology. Second, really kind of mechanical presentation and usability. There are concerns about the visual formatting, and then also talking about occupational categories and associated educational pathways. So for example, we talk a lot about occupations that require a bachelor's degree. And so we've only included bachelor level programs when we probably should also include associate level programs due to the transfer pathway that happens between associate and bachelor. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of usability around, do we have, are we producing enough students for a particular occupation or industry? And then finally, the third theme is alignment with educational programs. So really honing in on what those gaps are between current program offerings and workforce projections and teasing that out a bit more, actually a lot more. Considering alternative methods for identifying emerging fields, we've heard that a lot, that our current method for identifying emerging fields is a little wonky. So it's something that we can address in the 2026 iteration. And then finally, which I think is worth discussing a little bit more, concerns about degree inflation and exploring alternative pathways, including credentialing and non-degree workforce training. So that I think we should spend the 2025 year talking with our community partners about what that means, and back to this idea of different pathways that could support workforce need. Let me just walk you through our next steps. So at this point, I think we will be presenting the draft appendices as displayed to the commission at the March commission meeting. I don't think we are going to make substantive methodological changes, but at the March commission meeting, we will outline what we plan to address in the 2026 iteration. Some new ways to identify in-demand occupations, doing that rework of alignment of programs to occupations. So you will have a detailed outline of what to expect for the next iteration and what the next 8 to 10 months would look like. I will stop there and happy to answer questions.
Dr. Dukes has her hand raised. Oh, okay.
Commissioner Ago.
Yeah, just quick methodological question and then just a thought. So obviously for us as commissioners, my mind goes to program review. There will be things we change in the 7 version of this. If we have a objection, and of course we're going to use the workforce appendix as part of our analysis, we will be bound to use the 26 analysis, even if we know we're going to make changes for the 27.
Correct. So one of the things that we will have to say is there are some very significant limitations. So we're going to call this version the 2025 version. You're approving it in 2025. It will be the 2025 inaugural workforce needs analysis. So again, in that introductory memo, we will highlight the limitations that we are aware of in terms of this analysis. Now, I wouldn't say you're bound to use this analysis, but this is an analysis that stems from data and sources that are validated by Department of Labor, Department of Commerce. This was developed in collaboration with them, so it will be a statewide tool.
No, I actually am not. I actually think that we should use it to, again, deal with the issue of everyone brings their own data, like everyone brings their own facts. Just candidly, my one comment is, I think any methodological thing that makes this better, we should absolutely do. The one caution that I put out there is probably less for you all at MPEC, but then for us as commissioners, is to use the sports analogy, we don't want roughing up the ref, meaning we don't want people basically trying to make suggestions when really they might be upset that their industry is not in there. That's part of the goal. There'll be things that will be in there. There'll be things that won't be, because that's just the nature of the best analysis. And we as commissioners just have to say, I know you made this program in X. I'm sorry, by our best analysis, that's not what's required. And that is what it is. So on and so forth. And so that's just more of a comment that I want to make, because the purpose of this is to make it easier to have one single set of facts for what the economy needs from our system going forward. So I just want to say that out loud, because again, I want really good methodological improvements that we can all agree on that make it better for us to do our job. But I do not want this to turn into every industry is on this list, because that actually brings us exactly to where we are right now, which is that we don't agree on what's needed and what's not. So I just wanted to say that out loud, so make sure that the tool still serves the purpose.
Thank you, Commissioner Ago. Pending no other questions. So that's the update. That is what you all can look forward to in March. And like I said, this introductory memo for your approval will have an outline of what to expect for the next iteration and the changes we plan to make in light of this feedback. So with that, I will turn the meeting back over. I think Vice Chair, it's back to you. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, I think the motion we're gonna have to do now is to basically adjourn the open. Well, actually, if we have Attorney General Ward, quick procedural question: do I need to adjourn the public meeting, or do I simply move? Or do we simply move to go into closed session? Just so we do it correctly.
You have to a motion to go into closed session first. Then you have to have your closed session. You have to come back into open session and then adjourn.
Got it. Thank you. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
Do we have a second?
A second.
All right, we are going to go into closed session, and now, oh, sorry, excuse me. Let's have our vote. All those in favor of going into closed session, say aye or raise your hand. Do we have any abstentions or opposition? Hearing none, the ayes have it. And just mechanically, Deborah, if you could tell us how this works. Do we need to sign out and then sign into another link? I believe that's how we have to do it. But just if you just give us mechanical guidance here.
Sure. I can keep the open session link. I can keep this meeting link open, and then you can adjourn and go into your closed session link. And then when you're ready to come back, you should be able to simply rejoin. And
is the closed session link also in our invite, Deborah?
Sorry, did AG Ward send it, or AAG Ward send that to you?
I do not see one, so we may need to generate one quickly.
I can generate one and send it to you very quickly. Sure.
Thank you so much.
I don't have one, Debbie.
So we'll look after that in our email box shortly, and then so once we get that, folks, commissioners, you'll sign off here. go to the closed session. And then when we're done, we will head back and we will adjourn the public meeting. And I believe we think we still have everyone but our chair. So we'll just wait for that.
Vice Chair Agu, sorry about that. I'm back.
No. Oh, okay. We are generating a closed session link that commissioners will
perfect.
use. And then we'll just wait for Deborah to send to us, and then we'll all hop over there.
Perfect.
And then we'll hop back here to just formally adjourn the public session.
Full disclosure to my fellow commissioners, I am doing this meeting from my son's school. It is the school talent show today. And they put him last to accommodate my being able to see him play the piano and tell jokes. So I did that, and now I'm back. So
No, there's
trying
no
to be a working mom with a 10-year-old is not for the faint of heart.
no explanation necessary ever. Commissioners, I believe we all have the closed session link, so we will dive off here and then hop onto that new one, and I'll see you all in a second.
Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to go off of here.
And please let us know if you didn't get the link, commissioners. Commissioner Bands, do you have the link to the other session in your inbox? Oh, you might be muted.
And same for Commissioner Serrano. Just want to make sure Commissioner Serrano has the link.
I think I do.
Okay, perfect. I think the team is awaiting you on that side. Thank you. Sorry about the two separate links. And Debbie can resend it if you don't have it, Commissioner Serrano.
I have it.
Okay, great.
Thank
I
you.
think they started. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like we've got almost all of our commissioners here.
I definitely see a quorum.
Excellent. Ms. Ward, I understand that now that we're back, we've ended closed session. A quorum of the commissioners are back in open session, and so we need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. Do we have a motion?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
All in favor, say aye or raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.